Hello everyone and welcome to another video on JavaScript programming. Kaushal this side from SimpliCode, and today we are going to discuss the document object model in JavaScript. We'll go through the introduction first and then we'll move on to the usage and we'll see how JavaScript actually works when embedded with HTML. So before we begin, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and press that bell icon to never miss an update from SimpliCode. So without any further delay, let's get started. Let's start this video with the introduction to DOM. DOM stands for Document Object Model. It is an API for HTML and XML documents, which helps JavaScript to understand what is there written inside the HTML document. API stands for Application Programming Interface. To understand API better, let's take an example of a restaurant. Imagine yourself in the restaurant. You are sitting at the table with the menu. The chef in the kitchen is also part of the system. The waiter here works as a messenger between you and the chef. That's what API does. It works as a moderator between JavaScript and the HTML document. DOM defines the whole HTML document in a hierarchical form to make it understandable for JavaScript so that other JavaScript functions can work over it. It represents the entire document in the form of object and nodes. Whether it be elements or text or anything stored in the document, the entire page content can be accessed or manipulated by JavaScript. DOM is not used with JavaScript only. Other languages like Python also uses DOM. DOM was designed to be used independently. To begin with DOM, there is nothing special you have to do. Different browsers have different implementation of the document object model. Every browser uses DOM to make the web page of the document accessible by JavaScript. Let's move on and see what is document object model with the help of an example. I believe you guys have the basic knowledge of HTML and CSS, a prerequisite for this course. Let's start things off with a basic HTML example. Here we have a code that consists tags like HTML, head, body, heading tag, etc. We have the HTML tag here, the opening HTML tag and the closing HTML tag. Inside the HTML tag, we have the head tag, which contains the document's header part. Inside the head tag, there is a title tag that contains the title of the web page. Then comes the body tag, which contains a heading tag and two div tags, with IDs as div1 and div2. A div tag defines a particular section in the HTML document. The ID used within the div tag, it is an attribute basically, that has to be unique within the document to make the element unique from other elements. Next up, we have a paragraph tag with a class attribute within it. CSS and JavaScript uses classes to select and access specific elements. Don't worry guys if you have no idea about it. Let us first see the output of this code before going to the document object model of this whole document. So guys, this is the output of the previous code we just came through. Here we can see the title of the web page as well as heading after it. There were two different div tags used in the code. Here is the output of both the div tags. The question here is, where are those ID and class attributes seen in the output? The answer to this question is, there's nothing on this web page that can show both of them. We can use them in our CSS file or through JavaScript to specify the containers in which they are used. So we have concluded how a normal document works and how the browser interprets the HTML code. But how JavaScript uses this code is a bit different. That's where DOM comes into play. When the actual HTML document is loaded in the browser, another representation of that document is created, known as document object model. Here's the model you can see on your screen. Each of the tags used in HTML document is correspondingly represented as objects in the DOM, like starting from the HTML tag and covering all the other tags like head, title, body and few more. The same hierarchy as there was in the HTML document goes with the document object model also. Document object model is simply the same HTML document with different representation. The reason behind this different representation is that it's easy for JavaScript to interpret this format. JavaScript can't understand tags, but it can understand these objects. JavaScript can easily manipulate these objects using different functions, which we will see in future while working on these functions. For example, if you want to access the text present inside the heading tag, you can do it by accessing the heading tag with JavaScript. You can also work on the style of this text with the help of JavaScript as well. JavaScript uses the concept of nodes. It can access nodes of the document object model. There are many types of nodes present in the DOM. The basic three types are element node, attribute node, and text node. The element node consists of all the tags used in HTML document, like the head tag and the body tag. The attribute node contains the attributes used in HTML document. By now, I hope you have understood the concept of attributes. So JavaScript can access these attributes as well, and the user can work upon them as per requirements. The text here in the HTML document, that is simply. It can also be accessed with the help of JavaScript. It is the value of that particular element. As we know, the document object model is simply the same HTML document with a different representation, right? The reason behind this diverse representation is that it's easy for JavaScript to interpret this format. JavaScript can't understand tags in an HTML document, but it can understand these objects. Therefore, JavaScript can easily manipulate these objects using different functions, which we'll discuss in today's video. So if you haven't watched the previous video on what is document object model, I'll suggest you to go through it before we move on to the DOM manipulation. In this tutorial, we will understand the basics of how we can use JavaScript while creating or working on a website. It's like a real-world application of JavaScript. In this particular video, we are going to discuss the window object present in JavaScript. We'll also see how we can take input from the user for some special tasks. So let's move ahead and discuss window object in JavaScript. A window object is actually a global object present in the client-side JavaScript that can be seen in a Chrome browser. Let's move on to the programming part directly, and it will be easy for you guys to understand. So let's write something on a console first to see if the JavaScript file is working fine or not. So we'll write on the console. We'll write here console.log. Let's say we are printing a string. We'll write here welcome to SimpliCode. Right. So we have to write here console.log and we are good to go. So save it, and here you can see we have the string in our console. So this means the browser is working fine. So let's create a variable now. Let's say we are creating a variable A and we'll write here window, let's suppose, because we are talking about the window object today. Now we have written here window. Let's print this variable on a console first and then we'll see further. So let's say we are writing here console.log and we are printing A on our console. Save it, and here you can see in the console that we have the window object here. And if we click on this object, see, we have a whole list of methods present here inside the window object. This window object actually works the same as the date object or the math object present in JavaScript. It also contains methods that are predefined in JavaScript to perform some specific tasks. So here you can see we have an alert method here, and we have many more methods, right? So we have alert, we have close, we have cookie store, and so many other methods as well. If we go down here, we can see we have the document method here as well. So this document method contains the URL of that HTML file and one can access it. If we copy it from here and if we paste it here in a new tab, so let's say we are pressing enter, and here you can see we have the same HTML document. We have window.html opened over here. So this document contains the URL of the HTML file and one can access it with the document method. Next up, we have two different ways of using the window object in JavaScript. Suppose if we want to use the alert method. So if we want to use the alert method, let's say we are writing here window.alert. This is the first way of using the alert method. Save it, and let's say we are providing a string here. Let's say hello everyone. Fine. So Save it, and here you can see we have a pop-up in the browser saying hello everyone, right? So we have a pop-up here. If we remove the window keyword from this statement, like if we remove this window keyword from here, and if we say okay, and let's save this program again, and here you can see we have the same output again. So this is how we can use methods present within the window object in JavaScript. We can either write window dot the method name, or we can just write the method name. Both will work fine. Let's move ahead and talk about the prompt method. So guys, you might have noticed that we never took any input from the user till now. If we want to add two numbers, let's suppose, and we want the user to input those two numbers of the user's choice, we have to use the prompt method here to do so. So let's create a simple program that will take two inputs from the user, and then it will print the output on the console or directly on the browser. So we have to create two variables to store the values given by the user. So let's say we are commenting these lines and we are creating two variables here. So let's say the first variable is var x and the next variable is var y. So we are not giving any values right now. So next up, we'll use the prompt method in both the variables. So what we have to do is we have to write here prompt, and we have to enter what we want to print on that particular prompt. So we'll write here, let's suppose, enter the value of x, and we'll do the same at y variable as well. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here, and we'll write here enter the value of y. One thing to keep in mind with prompt is whatever input prompt takes from the user, it takes the input as a string. Suppose we try to run this program. Okay, if we are trying to run this program, let's say we are writing here console.log and we are printing x plus y. So let's try to save it. So here you can see it says enter the value of x. So let's say we are entering 45 and then again we are entering 50. So we want the output as 95. The moment we will press OK, you can see here the output is 4550 because the input taken with the help of prompt method will always be a string. So if we want this to be a number, what we have to do here is we have to use the %. Right, I hope you guys are aware of this term %. It is used to change a string value to a number value. So we'll write here %, and we'll put it inside a bracket. So similarly we'll do the same for variable y as well. So now we can add two numbers without any problem. So let's save this program again, and here we have the prompt which says enter the value of x. So let's say the value of x is 50 again, and we'll press enter. Then let's say the value of y is again 45. Fine. The moment the user presses enter after inserting the desired value, like the moment we'll press enter, it will print the output as x plus y. So it will print 95 on the console. So let's see if it works. Press enter, and here you can see we have the output as 95. So we can do one more thing here. We can print it on the browser as well. For that, what we have to do is we have to write here document.write, and we have to pass the values of x plus y. So let's save it now, and let's enter the value as 45 and 50 again. So here you can see we have the output as 95 on our browser. So this method is working totally fine. We'll use these two methods again in other videos while manipulating an actual HTML document with JavaScript in the next video most probably. So we'll go through events and we'll see how interesting it is to use JavaScript along with HTML and CSS. So for now, let's move ahead and take a look at another method, that is the confirm method. We use this method when we want to provide the user with the choice of yes or no. It actually assigns a Boolean variable whose value can be either true or false, depending upon OK or cancel, whichever button the user is clicking. So let's see the confirm method as well. So what we'll do, we'll comment this, and again say we have a variable a as window, right? So let's use this variable. So we'll write a equals to confirm and any string we want to print. So let's say we are writing a are you sure, or anything else you want to write. So let's write a console.log and we are printing the value of A. Fine. We have used console.log to print the value this confirm method returns to make it easy to understand. So let's save it and see here in the browser. We have a pop-up with a message, are you sure? And we have two options, right? We have OK and cancel. If we click here OK, so let's click here OK, you can see in the console we have the output as true. So, and if we click cancel here, so you can see the output as false in the console. I hope you guys understood this. So till now we know about alert, prompt and confirm method. The fun part is we don't use these methods too much in general these days because we have Bootstrap and CSS for doing these operations more efficiently these days. So we are going through these topics because these are the basic topics one should know while working on JavaScript. We should have knowledge about window object to understand how JavaScript is embedded with HTML to make beautiful and responsive web pages. Similarly, the document is also a part of this window object. Fine. So if we write here, let's comment this as well. And let's say if we write here, we have a variable A. Let's copy it from here and we'll paste it here. So let's say we have a variable A and we'll write here window.document. Fine. Next up, we'll print variable A on a console. So we'll write here console.log and we'll print the variable A. If we save it now, and here you can see we have the whole document here in the console. So if we click here, you can see we have the whole document. We have all the tags here. We have head tag, we have body tag, and even we have the script tag as well. So whatever tag we had in our HTML documents, all these tags are written over here. Basically the entire document is here, right? So we'll go through DOM manipulation as well. We'll make changes to a particular HTML document. For now, one thing I want you guys to focus on is the window object. Next up, let's talk about the window's inner width and inner height. So if we write here in the window.js, if we write here window, let's say window.inner height. So save it, and here you can see we have the height as 149. Now if we try to make changes in the size of Chrome, let's say if we try to change this size here and let's refresh it, see here we have the output as 100. Let's change it again and refresh it. Again we can see the output as 111, and let's do it once more. So here you can see we have the output as 144. Now similarly we can use inner width as well. So if we write here inner width and save it, here you can see we have the output as 335. So if we change the width of this particular document and refresh it, here you can see the output is also changed to 564. So these are the two methods, the inner height and the inner width. We might use them in further videos. Similarly, we have many more methods present within the window object to perform specific tasks. We have the location, we have scrollX method, we have scrollY, which works the same as inner width and inner height. You can go through all these methods. For that you have to write here variable A and window. So save it now, and here you can see we have all the methods present here. So these all are the methods we have present within the window object. So there are more than 100 methods present here, or maybe more than 200 or 300 methods. If you scroll down, you can see we have a number of methods present here. You can go through any of these methods. So you guys can use them by yourself, or we'll discuss the important ones whenever we need them. This was a brief intro to document object model manipulation. In this video, we'll start with some DOM manipulations, and later on we'll be taking a look at the document.getElementById method. By now, we have come a long way from where we began. Now we know functions, we know classes, data types, and almost every basic concept one needs to know while working on JavaScript. We know the functioning of document object model, right? We know that DOM is an API that helps JavaScript understand what is there written inside the HTML document. So DOM defines the whole HTML document in a hierarchical form to make it understandable for JavaScript so that other JavaScript functions can work over it, right? So by far we have a lot of theoretical information about the document object model in JavaScript. We also came across the window object present in JavaScript, and we know about methods, right? But we never used JavaScript to manipulate DOM on any HTML documents. So today we are going to start the video with the DOM manipulation. So in this video we are going to add some functionality to our web page. This means that today we are working on a little bit of HTML as well. So let's move on to the programming part, and we'll see how we can manipulate a basic design of a web page, and we'll try to manipulate it with DOM. So adding functionality to a web page refers to doing tasks like we want to perform validations or having few text boxes for a phone number or account number. So let's say we want only numbers to be there inside these boxes, or we don't want them blank, or any other functionality we want to add. Then we can use JavaScript. So talking about HTML, let's do one thing here. We'll create a button with the help of button tag, and we already have this heading with the h2 tag here, right? So we have this heading DOM manipulation part 2. So it is printed on our browser as well. Now what we'll do is we'll create a button. So let's create an empty button first. So what we have to do here is we have to write in this HTML document, we have to use the button tag, and let's say the button name will be click here. Fine. So here we are. We have created a button, save it, and here you can see we have a button named click here. Now talking about events, we have many events present in HTML. Like if we are clicking on this button, so this is an event. So if we click here, for now we can see nothing is happening over here. Similarly, we have many standard events present in HTML like click events, scrolling events. So if we want to change the focus from one text box to another, or we are dragging some text or selecting something, or double clicking on it as well. What if we target these particular events to perform specific actions with the help of JavaScript? So these events are basically the methods present within the window object. Just like the onClick method, we have the onClick method in window object, right? So we can use onClick method to perform some specific task here. So we'll see how we can use onClick method here. For example, let's say we want this button to perform a specific task when we click on it. Right now, if we click on this button, we can see nothing is happening over here. So let's say we want to show an alert message on clicking over this button. So the flow of this click will be like, if we click here on this button, then something in the JavaScript code has to register this activity and perform some specific task like a pop-up alert message or some sort of other messages. So we have been through the alert method present within the window object in the last video. So let's suppose we want a pop-up when the user clicks on this button. So what is going to happen is when we click over here, where we want a pop-up on our screen with a message written over there. So let's say we want an alert with the message welcome to SimpliCode, right? We can do it in JavaScript with the help of functions. We already know functions, right? So functions are statements we use to perform some specific task. We can call them anytime. Here in this case, if we want to embed JavaScript within an HTML document, then what we have to do is we have to use a window object method or event, we can say, to call a function on clicking the button. So we have to use the onClick event. So let's try to do it. What we'll do is we'll write here button, and over here we'll write onClick. So here you can see we have other methods, or we can say other events as well. We have onCanPlay, we have onDoubleClick, we have onScroll. So we can use any of them. So for now, let's suppose we are using onClick, and we want to map it to the JavaScript document. So we can do it with the help of functions. So let's create a function first. So what we'll do, we'll go to the .js file and we'll create a function here. So let's say we are creating a function named function, let's say button, and then we have the opening and closing round brackets and the body of the function. So we want this function to return a pop-up with the message welcome to SimpliCode, right? So we'll write here alert. So I hope you guys are aware of this alert term because we have been through it in the last video. So we'll write here alert welcome to SimpliCode, and we'll save it. So if we call this function over here only, so what we have to do is, let's see if this function is working fine or not. So we'll write a button and we'll call it. So save it now. And if we refresh this, so here you can see we have a pop-up with the message welcome to SimpliCode. So this function is working totally fine. We can use this function with the HTML document as well. All we have to do is we have to write the function name after the onClick event. So we'll comment this statement here and we'll go back to our HTML file and we'll write the name of a function here. So our function name was button, and here we have our function. So save it, and here on the browser, if we click on this button, so we can see the output as a pop-up with the message welcome to SimpliCode. What it will do is it will automatically call the function when the user presses the button. So this is how we can map events in JavaScript. We'll do so many such things in upcoming videos, like changing the style of text and the on mouse over effect we have in JavaScript. We'll also go through it, and we'll see many more such events in further videos. So this is just an example of what is yet to come. So let's move on and talk about the getElementById method. So let's say we don't want this pop-up on click. What we want to do is we want to change this heading here. So you can see here we have the heading as DOM manipulation part 2. We want to replace this text with something else on the button click. So the function will remain the same. What we'll change is we'll change the body of this function. So instead of writing here alert, what we'll do is we'll use the ID now. So what we'll do first is we'll provide ID to this heading tag. So let's say this heading tag has the ID named as heading. So we have the ID heading for this head h2 tag. So what we'll do here is we'll write here document. So as you guys know, document is also a method present within the window object, right? So we'll write here document.getElementById and we'll pass the ID we want to use. So here in this particular case we want to use this ID heading, so we'll pass heading over here. So we'll copy it from here and we'll paste it here. Fine. Then we have the dot inner HTML property. So here in this case we want to take reference to the object h2. So we know h2 acts as an object in the document object model, right? So we can use it to take the reference of this object, and also all the objects do have some properties, right? So the dot inner HTML here is the property of object h2, and it will hold the value written inside the h2 tag. So the dot inner HTML property holds the value DOM manipulation part 2. So what we want to do next is we want to change this text to something else, right? So if we want to write here something else, so let's say we want to write here subscribe to SimpliCode. Fine. So let's say this is the string we want to print here on clicking the button. So we want to change this text to subscribe to SimpliCode. Although if we save it now, we don't see any change now. That's because we want the text to change on button click. So if we click on this button now, here you can see the text is changed. So similarly, we can do a lot many things with this now. For example, we can store this value inside our own variable. So what we have to do here is we have to write here var c is equal to, and now this var c will hold the value returned by this statement. Next up, what we'll do is we'll use the alert method and we'll write here c. So what it will do is it will take the value, so var c will hold the value DOM manipulation part 2, and next up this value will be printed on the pop-up here. So let's save it now, and if we click here, we can see here we have the pop-up with message DOM manipulation part 2. So we can use this dot inner HTML method to get the string present inside the h2 object, and we can also use the alert method with this variable then. So there are many more ways to access the elements. The document.getElementById method is just one of them. In this video, we will create a website layout and make changes in that layout using the document object model. Today, we are going to work with HTML as well and a little bit of CSS. So we are going to use multiple tags from HTML and we are going to use CSS for styling those tags. So for now, I hope you guys must have a clear understanding of tags in HTML and styling as well. So let's move ahead and we are going to use the div tag first. We are going to make few sections of a particular section and then we are going to use CSS for styling those div tags. So let's use the div tags first. So what we are going to do is we are going to create a particular section for all the div tags in the HTML document. So we are going to write here div, and then inside this div we are again going to create some more sections. So we'll write here div and then we'll write here this is section 1. Similarly, we are going to create few more sections inside this div tag. Then we'll copy paste it and we'll change the names for these sections. So we'll save it now, and here you can see we have 3 sections. We have section 1, 2 and 3. If we go to element and if we try to check the area covered by these div tags, so we can go here and we can see this is the area which is highlighted right now. This is the area covered by a particular div tag. So we have a div tag, then inside that div tag we have 3 more div tags present, right? So we have section 1, 2 and 3 here. Now we are going to use the concept of class and IDs as well. So we'll write here class is equals to, and let's say the class for this div tag is left. Then again for this div tag, let's say the class is right. And then lastly the class will be, let's say, center, right? So we have 3 different classes here as well. Now if we save it, we don't see any particular change for now, but if we try to use CSS here, so what we have to do is we have to use the style tag, and inside this style tag we have to define the properties for particular classes. So for class left, let's say the property is background color, and let's say the background color will be crimson. Fine. Next up we have the class as right, and for right the background color will be, let's say, dark blue. And then we have another class here as well which is center. So for class center the background color will be, let's say, gold. Fine, save it now, and now here you can see we have all the 3 sections with different background colors. This is section 1, so this particular section has the background as crimson. Then we have section 2 with background as blue, and then we have section 3 with background as gold, right? I hope you guys are clear with this concept of class till now. Next up, I hope you guys are already aware of this difference between class and ID, but let's go through this concept quickly. So whenever we want to make changes in multiple elements in our program, we use class. For example, if we want to use the crimson color as the background color for section 4, and let's say we want to use the gold color as background color for section 5. So what we are going to do is we are going to create 2 more sections, and the section 4 will inherit the properties of class left and the section 5 will inherit it from class center. So let's do it. We'll create here 2 more div. So we'll copy it and we'll paste it here, and again we'll paste it here. We'll change the names as 4 and 5 and the classes as well. So the class of section 4 will be left and the class of section 5 will be center. So let's save it. You can see here we have 2 more div, or we can say we have 2 more sections present over here. We have section 4 and we have section 5 over here, right? Now if we talk about section 4, we can use 2 classes here, right? So you can see for now we have only 1 class over here. We can use another class over here. So let's say we are using a class named size. So for now we don't have any class with name size. So this is the syntax of how we can use 2 different classes within a single element. All we have to do is we have to put space between these 2 classes and we are good to go. So let's define this class here. So we have to define the class size here. So we'll write here dot size, and let's say we want the font size to be smaller. So let's save it. Here you can see the font size of this particular div tag is changed. The font is a bit smaller when compared to other fonts over here. And if you want to do something more, like if you want to make it bolder, you can do it, or any other thing you want to do, you can do it with the help of CSS. So on the other hand, the ID attribute specifies a unique property or a unique section. So using the ID attribute, we can identify a unique element. So as you know, we can use ID with document.getElementById. Basically, that is the only reason we say that ID has to be unique. Otherwise, there's no problem if you are using ID for two different elements. If you are using the same ID for two different elements. Let me show it to you with the help of an example. So here in this particular section, in this section 4, we are going to use the ID attribute as well. So we are going to name this ID as 1. Save it now, and we have to define the ID here as well. So for that we have to use hash, and then we have to use the ID name. So let's say this will change the font weight. Fine. So it will make it bolder. So let's save it now, and here you can see this is section 4 is a little bit thicker than other sections. So if we want to use this same ID for any other element, right, we can do it. There's no problem with that. Let me show you guys. So if we write a ID as 1, and if we save this program now, here you can see there's no error with that. We can use this ID for section 1 as well. So it's not necessary that the ID should be unique for every element of the website, but it has to be unique because we can use ID for manipulating a web page, right? We can use it with document.getElementById. So that's why we prefer to keep the ID unique for every element inside a HTML document. So I hope you guys are clear with the difference between class and ID by now. The major difference is class is used for multiple targets, whereas we use ID uniquely for each element. We want the ID to be unique. So that's the difference between class and ID. Moving ahead, let's talk about the document object model. So what we are going to do now is we'll go to the JavaScript file, and we are going to see the document object model now. By now, we are aware of the document object model, right? We are aware of the window object. We are aware of the document object. We have already came across these two objects in the previous video. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here var x. We are declaring a variable x, and we'll write here document. So we already did this in the previous video. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here console.log, and we are going to print x on a console. So save it, and if we go to console, here you can see we have the document here, or we can say we have the document object model for the whole document, for the whole HTML document. We know that the DOM is a structural representation of HTML document. So we have here HTML tag, we have head, body, and almost every tag we have here, right? You can see we have script here, we have div here, we have all the div tags present here. Now we know that the document is also an object like any other object, right? We already discussed it. It also has its own attributes and properties as well. So next up, you guys can see we have here a fundamental website, right? So this is a website basically. What we have here is we have 5 different sections, and we have a heading here as well, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to work on it with the help of document object model. So we can use CSS to make changes to the syntax like we used previously while creating divisions of our web page. But for now, let's focus upon the JavaScript part more. So in JavaScript, we can write code that will help us in manipulating the document object model. So this document object model has a tree-like structure with HTML tag at the top. Then we have head and body tag, and then we have all the tags present inside them in a branch-like structure. We are aware of this, right? If we see here in the console, we have a document, and if we try to open it, we can see we have HTML head and many more tags present within all these significant tags. Next up, if we write here document.all instead of document, so if we save it now, here you can see we have the HTML collection of all the tags with numbers in front of them. So here you can see we have HTML head and then body tag, and here you can see especially we have the classes as well here. Not just classes, we have the IDs as well. So here you can see we have div1 here as well. So this is the HTML collection of all the tags we have in a HTML document, and we can check it with the help of document.all property. Now, suppose we want to access a particular segment in this program or in this document. We want to access elements present within the head tag, let's say, or within the body tag. In that case, we have to write a statement that goes like this. So instead of document.all, we'll write here document.head. Save it, and here you can see we have the head segment of this particular document with all the tags over here. So here you can see we have meta tags and title tags only, because till now we haven't added any particular tag in the head section of a HTML document. So let's do one thing, let's try to access the body tag. We'll write here document.body and save it. So here you can see we have the body of our HTML document here with all the tags. So here you can see we have the CSS file as well. We have background color for each class, and then we have the ID as well. So this is how you can access a particular segment of your HTML document with the help of JavaScript. Next up, sometimes it may happen that we may include forms in our website and later we want to access them in our console. So in JavaScript, we have a method for that also. So what we have to do is we have to write here document.forms. So we'll remove body from here and we'll write here forms. Save it. As you can see, we have an HTML collection of forms, but we have no form for now in a HTML document, so it's showing 0. So let's do one thing, let's add a form over here. So we'll write here form, and so let's say our form will take 3 values. So it will take name, age, and then we have a submit button, right? So we'll write here name, then we'll write here input type is equals to text, and then we have name is equals to name. Fine. Next up we have the age. So we'll write here age input type is equals to number and name is equals to age, right? Then finally we have the submit button. Fine. So we'll write here input type is equals to button, and then we have value as submit, let's say. Save it, and here you can see we have name, age, and submit. So let's do one thing, let's add the break tag or BR tag here. We'll do it here as well. Save it, and now you can see we have name, age, and submit. So this is basically a form. If we go to elements and if we go to a form, you can see we have the form highlighted over here. It consists of 3 different properties. It has name, it has age, and then it has a button, a submit button basically. So obviously it will not work fine for now because we haven't added any functionality till now. So we'll discuss about it in later videos. So for now our main purpose is to access this form with the help of JavaScript. We'll go back to our JavaScript file. We'll save it again, and now if we click over here, you can see we have a form present over here. We have 0 and then we have form written over here, right? So we can see we have input and then we have the properties of this particular form and all of this stuff. So you can see we have a form present over here, or we can access a form with the help of JavaScript. So now let's say we have a scenario where we have 4 different forms and we want to access form 3 from them. So what we have to do in that case is we have to write here document.forms and we have to provide the form number. So as you know, as you can see here, the form number starts from 0. So for form number 3, the number will be 2. Fine. So if we save it now, it will show an error because Obviously we don't have any forms over here till now, so we have added only one form, but it will work fine if you try to do it with more than one forms. So this is how you can access forms with the help of JavaScript. Next up, we'll try to access images as well. So if you have added any image in your HTML document, you can also access it with the help of JavaScript. So what we are going to do is we are going to add an image over here. So let's do it first. We'll write here img, then we have the image source as simplicode.png, and then we have the alt. So we'll write here SimpliCode. Right, so we have added an image here. Save it, and here you can see we have the image, but the image is quite large. Right, so what we are going to do is we are going to use CSS in this case. We'll write here ID, and let's suppose the ID is 2. Right, we have used 1 already, so we'll write here 2. We'll go to our CSS file, we'll write here. So the property we'll write here is max width and max height. So max height, let's say, will be 50%, and then we have max width as well. So let's say the width is also 50%. Save it, and here you can see the image is fine now. So we have added this image over here. The main motive is to access this image with the help of JavaScript, right? So we'll go to a JavaScript file. Instead of document.form, so we'll write here document.images, and we'll save it. So here you can see we have HTML collection with image here. If you noticed here, you can see we have the image with the ID as well. So you can see here 2 is written over here after the img. So this is the image, and we can access it with the help of JavaScript. We can access as many images as we want with the help of JavaScript. So for now we have added only a single image. You can do it with the help of more than one images. Next up, just like we can access images, we can access forms, we can access the body segment, the head segment, everything of an HTML document. Similarly, we can access the links as well. We can access scripts as well. So for that, we have to make minor changes over here. We have to write, instead of document.images, we have to write either document.links or document.scripts. So the syntax will remain same. All we have to do is we have to write here scripts or links or images, whatever we want to access with the help of JavaScript, we have to write it over here. So I want you guys to check it with the help of links and scripts. Before we look at the DOM traversing in JavaScript, let's discuss another small yet interesting method in JavaScript, that is the querySelector method. This querySelector method in JavaScript helps the user to get the first element from the document with a particular query. As the name suggests, it will return the first element related to that query. Suppose we see here in the previous code, so we are using the previous code, the one which we used in the previous video. So we are going to use the same code. So we can see here we have an element with class left here, right? So this is a class left, and the element with class left is this div is here with class left. Fine. In fact, we have more than one element with class left, right? So this div also has the class left. Now, if we want to find the first element with class left, in that case, we can use the querySelector method. So it will return this div tag in the console, or wherever we want to print it, it will return this div tag there. So let's implement this in coding. So we'll go to the JavaScript file, and let's suppose we want to access a particular element, or we can say the first element with the class is left. Okay, so let's remove this, and we'll write here where x is equal to document. It's quite similar to what we studied in the last video, like we did for forms and all. So what we have to do here is we have to write here x equals to document dot query selector, and then we have to pass the class name here. Instead of class name, we can pass the element name as well. We can pass the ID as well. So in this particular case, we are going to pass the class name. So we'll write here dot left. So this is our class name, and then we'll print this x on the console. So we'll write here console.log, and we'll print x here. So the syntax is quite simple for the querySelector method. Let's save it and check the output. So you can see here that in the output we have null here, right? So it may happen to some of you guys that it will show null here in the console. Every one of you or me doesn't need to have to go through it. Like, it happens mostly when we try to access the element before the document object model is ready. So you may have encountered a similar situation earlier in the last video when you try to access a particular form in the document using numbers. Like we were using there, we were writing there, we were doing is we were accessing a particular form. So this will give an error, right? Save it, and here you can see it says undefined as well. So this is the problem. This is because the document object model is still not ready. So we can tackle this problem in two ways. We can use the onload method, and the other one is we can use the DOM content load event. So for now, we'll use the onload method because that method is a bit easier than the other one. So what we have to do is we have to create a function in our JS file. So we'll create a function here. Let's say we are creating a function 1s. Fine. And we have the body of the function. So what we are going to do is we are going to cut this from here and we are going to paste it inside the function. Fine. So you can see here we have a function 1s, and now what we are going to do is we are going to call this function from our HTML file, right? So we are going to call this function along with the onload event. So we'll go to a HTML file and we'll write here along with the body tag. We'll use onload method and we'll write here a function name. Fine. So this is a function name 1s. This onload event executes the JavaScript code right after the web page is completely loaded. Save it now, and here you can see we have the output for the querySelector method, or you can see we have the output for the document.forms, right? We have the form present at number 1. So issue is solved now. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove this line from here, and now we'll go back to a querySelector method. So save it again, and here you can see we have the query here, right? We have the output as div class equals to left, and then we have id1. So we have this particular element here, right? So this is how we can use the querySelector method in JavaScript to access any particular query or to search any particular query. Moving ahead, let's talk about traversing the document object model in JavaScript. In layman terms, traversing refers to crossing or traveling through something, right? In JavaScript, we can traverse a document object model to find some specific element from the document. We know that DOM has a tree-like structure with parent and child nodes, right? Traversing a DOM is important because sometimes we need to locate or modify a particular element, but there may exist a possibility that the code is too long, or we don't want to search for that specific element by going through every element present in the document. So that's where we can use the DOM traversing method to find a particular component. So let's understand the concept of root node, parent element and child element. So here in this structure, you can see we have several nodes present, right? So the first node we are going to discuss is the root node. So this HTML tag is actually the root node, which has no parent and it has children's, right? So this HTML tag is also a parent node. Another example for parent node is the body tag. So you can see here we have so many children's along with the body tag. We have h1 div and we have div id equals to div2. We have two div tags. We have an h1 tag, and similarly head is also a parent node as well as a child node. A child node to this HTML and a parent node to title, right? So the HTML tag has two children, which are head and body. The head is the first child and the body is the last one. Here you can see we have the h1 tag, and this h1 tag is the child node of body tag. So these all are the child nodes. We have h1 div and then we have another div and title. They all are the child nodes. Similarly, these div elements are also parent elements to these two child elements, right? The document object model in JavaScript can be traversed in two different directions, either in downward direction or in upwards direction. It's not necessary that traversing the DOM should start from the beginning or from the end. We can begin traversing from wherever we want, and it can be random. All we need to know before starting is the class name, or we can say element name or something like that related to that particular element which we want to find. So traversing downwards means we want to find the element while coming towards the downward direction. So we have two different methods in JavaScript to traverse the DOM downwards. So we can either use the querySelector method, which we came across moments ago. The other one is we can use the children property, so which helps us in find the direct descendants of an element. So let's move ahead and take a look at both these methods with the help of examples. Till now we were using document.querySelector method to find something in our document, right? Now we will use querySelector along with the variable name to find a specific element inside a parent element. So let's do one thing. We'll go to our HTML file, and what we'll do, we'll give this div tag a class. So let's say we are using a class here and the class name is container. We didn't define this class as of now, but we are using this class for this particular div tag. Fine. Now we want to find a particular element inside this particular div tag. For that we have to take two variables, right? So we'll go back to our JavaScript file and we'll remove this code. We'll take two variables, let's say var x and we have var y. Fine. So for var x we'll use the document dot querySelector method and we'll write here the class name. So the class name for the parent div is container, right? And for variable y we'll write here x dot querySelector. So one thing you might have noticed here is we have used the variable name, right? So we are looking for a particular element inside this particular div tag. So we have identified this div tag with the help of class name. So the class name is container, and now we are looking for a particular element inside this div tag. So let's say we want to find the element with classes right here. So we'll write here dot right. So this is our class name. So next up we are going to print the element on a console. So we'll write here console.log y, and when we save it, you can see here we have the first element with class right. So we have this div tag here inside which it is written that this is section 2. So you can see here we have the first element present with the class right. So this method so far has helped us in traversing the DOM in a downward direction. Firstly, we found a parent node and then we started looking for the child node in a downward direction from that element. So with the help of this method, we can find any element present within an element in the tree-like hierarchy. So if we use this method for body tag and then we want to find the element with class right, although the element with the class right is not a direct descendant of the body tag, right? So if we go back to our HTML page, so you can see here if we are using any class here inside the body tag and we want to find the element with class right, so we can see this is not a direct descendant of body tag. Instead it is a direct descendant of this particular div tag, right? So we can still find it with the help of this querySelector method. But what if we want to see the direct descendant to a particular node? So for that we can use children property in JavaScript. So we can see here that this particular div tag has 5 different sections present within it, right? So we have this div tag and then we have 5 different div tags basically. So you can see this is section 1, 2, 3, then 4 and lastly 5. So we'll try to access these 5 elements now with the help of children property. So for that we'll go back to our JavaScript file and we'll write in our JavaScript file. We'll copy this statement from here and we'll write it in another line so that it won't create any confusion to you guys. So what we have to do here is we have to remove this from here and we have to find the children of x. So what's there inside x? We have the div tag, the parent div tag inside this x, right? And we want to find the children of this div tag. So we'll save it and you can see we have an HTML collection of 7 length. And you can see here the length has 7 and we have all the elements here. We have div 1 and then we have div 2, 3, 4, 5 and then we have form and image as well. Because form and image is also present inside this particular div tag. So we have all the elements present here of this particular parent div tag. This children property returns the elements only. If we write here instead of children, if we write here child nodes, so let's do it and check the output first. So we have written here child nodes, save it, and here you can see it returns a node list of 15 elements, right? But one thing to notice here is this text is printed almost after every element, right? So you can see text here, then we have text here, then we have text here, and we have text almost after every element, right? Why so? Because this method also publishes the new line. So suppose if we are using the new line, if we are using a new line in our code, it will publish that as well. And let's suppose we want to write a comment over here. So let's go here to a HTML file and write a comment over here. So where we'll write the comment, we'll write the comment here. Fine. So we'll write a comment here. So let's say we'll write here, this is a comment. Fine. So we have commented this line and save it. So you can see the size changed to 17, right? Because it says there are 2 more lines added to our code. So you can, if you see here, you can see here we have a comment here as well, and we have a text added here as well because of this new line. So it will take this as a new line and it will print it as text. So this is how the child nodes is different from the children. So if we want to compare them side by side, what we can do is we'll write here console.log and we'll print x.children. Fine. So save it, and here you can see we have a node list of 17 elements and a HTML collection of 7 elements. The difference is the children property focuses on elements only, whereas the child nodes property will print everything inside a node. Next up, we can access a particular element from the list of all children's. So the syntax will be the same as for forms. If you remember from the previous videos, we can access any form from the HTML file by using numbers, right? Form presented number 1 will be treated as forms 0 and then so on and so on. So we'll write here, let's say children at number 4. So save it, and you can see here we have the output as this is section 5. So we don't know, so let's do one thing. We'll copy this line and we'll paste it here. We'll print the children's as well basically. Save it, and here you can see we have all the children's here. So this particular statement will print the element present at number 4. So you can see here we have this div tag here with class as center. So it will be printed in a console. So you can see here it says this is section 5. Fine. Similarly, just like we have the children and child nodes property, we have few more properties here. We have the first child, first element child, last child and last element child properties, which returns the first and last child and elements. So let's use them as well. So what we are going to do is we are going to remove this. We are going to write here console.log and x.firstChild. Fine, copy this and we'll paste it again and again. So the next one is first element child, and then we have last child, and finally we have last element child. Fine, so we are good to go. The first child, then we have first element child, then we have last child and last element child. Save it, and here you can see the first one says text and the third one says text, and the other two are presenting the elements present at number 1 and present at number last. So the first child and last child properties works on the child node property, and it returns the first and last child according to the property only. The first element child and last element child property works on the children property. So we know the difference. The children property focuses on elements only, whereas the child node property shows everything inside that nodes, right? So that's why the output here is text for first child and last child, and for first element child and last element child, so we have two different elements present here, right? We have an image element and the div element. We can also count the number of child elements present within a single node. We have to use the child element count property for doing so. So let's use it as well, and we'll write here console.log, and we'll write here x.child element count. Fine, save it, and we have the output here as 7. This property is also working on the basis of children property. Fine, so you can see here we have the length as 7. As we have seen earlier, while using the children property, the length is 7 there as well. Like we can find the child element of a particular node, we can also find the parent element. So the syntax remains the same, and we have to use the parent element property to find the parent of any element. So what we are going to do is we are going to find the parent of this particular div tag. We have the parent div tag, right, with class container. So we are going to find the parent for this particular div tag. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here console.log and x.parent element. So save it, and here you can see we have the parent as the body tag here. Here you can see we have body, onload, and then we have function name, and whatever is there inside the body tag, we have it all here. Fine. So this line gave us the parent element of this particular div tag with class container. Now we can use this method to find the parent of any element, or we can use the parent node property as well. The output will remain the same in both cases, because any child node in the document can have one parent only, right? So this is known as traversing in upward direction. Now, before we end this video, let me guys take you through another concept in this particular topic. We can also access the siblings of a specific element. So like a parent, div here has so many children, right? We have 5 children for the div tag, not 5, we have 6, and then we have 7 children. So because we have 7 tags present here inside the div tag, inside this particular div tag, right? So we can access the siblings of a particular child. Let's suppose if we want to access the siblings of this particular child, right? We want to access the siblings. So the siblings are, the immediate left sibling will be this one, and the immediate next sibling or the right sibling will be this one. So what we have to do to access the siblings of these elements is we have to write here, instead of document.querySelector, we have to write here center, right? Because we want to access the siblings of this particular div tag, right? So what we'll do next is we'll write here console.log, and then we have to write here x.next element sibling for the next one, and we have to write here console.log x.previous. So we can find the previous element sibling as well. And now what we have to do is save it, and here you can see we have 2 different div tags present here, one with class left and the other one is one with class right. So if we go back to our HTML file, we can see here we have the div with class left as the next element present to this particular element, and the div with class right as the previous element of this particular element with class center, right? So I hope you guys understood this. So that's all for this video, guys. So if you liked this video, do give it a thumbs up. If you have any doubts, do let us know in the comments below. Share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe SimpliCode. Thank you.